evening, Sri S. Gurumurthy.
My friend and the President of Hindustan Chamber of Commerce, Dr. N.R. Dave, Mr. Nagappan, Chairman Expert Committee on Economic Affairs, who actually provoked me into discussing before you my ideas on gold. Mr. Murali, the President-elect of Hindustan Chamber of Commerce, who will take over from Dr. Dave, and Mr. Vaidyanathan, who will be honoring me probably after this, and Mr. Srikanth, who introduced me very generously, and to the extent that I felt very embarrassed to sit on the stage. And there are very eminent people in the audience, Mr. G. Narayan Swami, Mr. Rajanathanam, and many others. I'm not able to repeat everyone's name because there are far too many. So I repeated the names of the people for whom I have great personal love. And dear brothers and sisters, you know, economics is really not a subject for an evening talk. It's a very dry, boring subject. It requires special interest. And it requires a special liking to know things far beyond oneself. Otherwise, this is not a subject which one can invite or to which one can be invited. So when I see so many people of varying age groups and professions and persuasions, I feel that there is a lot of concern about where the country's economy is. So you will not come here just for spending an evening. You must all be prepared for a very, I wouldn't call it an interesting talk. It would be a very serious talk. So to listen to a serious talk, actually you have to prepare yourself. And the speaker has also to prepare you. And that's why I feel it is my duty that we should be prepared for a very serious discourse this evening. You know, I was introduced as some kind of an economist, economic thinker, and Business Baron magazine rated my knowledge of economics and accounts as outstanding. You know, these are all opinions of others. I am not an economist. I don't think economists will ever accept me as economist. Even journalists don't accept me as journalists. Chartered accountants sometimes believe I am a chartered accountant. You know, this is the kind of personality crisis, identity crisis I suffer from. But the fact remains, economics is really not a subject of experts. Unfortunately, it has become one. Because of that, any person who thinks he needs to discuss, know, question, and express views about economics takes two steps back when they feel that this is a subject of experts. Adam Smith was not an economist, nor was Ricardo, or was Karl Marx. They all studied the society, the behavior of the society, and deduced certain principles as to how people look at money, handle money, spend money, invest money, and theorized this is how all are. And it did not require great expertise. It really requires observation. This observational understanding of society, which is today regarded as empirical knowledge, not regarded as research, this has really robbed economics of great contribution by people who are players, actors, and promoters of economics. Today, economics has become a subject of study of people who are sitting in air-conditioned rooms. They have not even gone and met the players in the field of economics. I have not seen many economists in India who have gone to Ludhiana, Batala, Rajkot, Jamnagar, Morbi, right down to Thoothukudi. There are 2,500 industrial clusters in this country, which produce almost 60% of India's production and exports, which employ 93% of the Indian population. I don't think any economist has gone to any of these places. So today what we read as economics is something which is carbon copied from the West, which I am going to tell you. Some of my studies and observations have shocked economists. It's because I am not an economist. Once you are an economist, you are glued into a particular mode, psychology, way of thinking. And one economist by name Galbraith, he wrote about economics and economists somewhere in 1970s, very appropriate even today. He said this is such a subject where we are very clear about who should be admitted into the subject. We admit only those who agree with us. If somebody doesn't agree with us, we will not allow them to be in this group. And once they agree with us, it will continue because there will be no change, there will be no innovation. And in the absence of any other viable way of putting things, this is the only mechanism available for governments, politicians, businessmen. I have very, very serious questions about economics, which I am going to tell you now. Not about economics as a subject, but economics as a subject which is being taught and discoursed in this country. You know, when Mr. Dave asked me to be part of a function in which Mrs. Nirmala Tyagarajan and Nirmala Sitaraman, I said I don't appear on the same platform as ministers. It's a fact. But all of them, or many of them, are my friends, good friends. And you know, when the government was formed, I thought this is a government which can perhaps have an open mind to listen to my questions and perhaps listen to what I think as answers. So I met the Prime Minister of India. And I made a presentation before him. He's a very intelligent man. He can grasp things like this. He is like a blotting paper. What another person will require an hour to understand, he will understand in 5 minutes. But that doesn't mean everything will work out all right. Please, because the system is there, the economists are there, the politicians are there, the bureaucracy is there, the world opinion is there, the IMF is there, the World Bank is there, the Americans are there. So a Prime Minister of India has to face all these people. And I will tell you how it is happening in practical terms. I told him the entire post-liberalization economic model, or what is called reform, has centered around 3 institutions. One, the organized sector, which is the corporate sector, public and private put together. The second is foreign investment. The third, stock market. These are the 3 institutions around which the entire economic reform model was centered. I told him, now figures are available. It is almost a quarter century from the time we started what is known as reform. But in India, you must understand, reform was not undertaken by somebody who came afresh. The reform was undertaken by deformers. Those who deformed became reformers in 1991. So they said, we are for reform. No one questioned them. What were you doing so far? You are only deforming India. You are only running down India. You are making India dysfunctional. And now you are becoming reformers. Anyhow, that apart. In this 23 years, when I showed him the figures, of how the corporate economy has behaved. You know, the corporate sector contribution to the GDP today is 15% of the total GDP. The public sector, private sector, listed corporate, unlisted corporate put together constitutes only 15%, 1/5 of India's GDP. And if you reduce it to the listed corporates, BSE 500 exhausts almost 90% of the listed corporates in India. The listed corporates constitute only 5% of India's GDP. And you reduce it further and come to the Sensex corporates. The Sensex corporates contribute to only 1% of India's GDP. Tell me, how many economists know about this breakdown situation? In 1991, the share of the corporate sector was 12% of the GDP. Today it is 15% of the GDP, an increase of just 3%. And at what kind of propelling, encouragement, what kind of glorification the corporate sector has improved from 12% to 15% of the GDP. And what is its contribution? So I told Mr. Modi, the public and private sector put together of the corporates have added only 2.2 million employment between 1991 and 2014 March. In 23 years, private sector added 3.7 million jobs. Period. Public sector dropped 1.5 million jobs. And the net is 2.2 million. When I told this to Mr. Modi, he was shocked. And it is not that they added 2.2 million jobs without the kind of encouragement that was given to them. And I will read the figures. The total FDI that came into India, FII, FDI put together, $317 billion came into the corporate sector between 1991 and 2013. Added to that is borrowing in foreign currency, $160 billion. So the total amount of foreign investment by way of loans and equity that came into the corporate sector was $477 billion. Added to that is the loans which the banks in India advanced to them, 19 lakh crores. If you add these things together, it comes to 48 lakh crores. With 48 lakh crores money going into the corporate sector, the net direct addition to employment is 2.2 million. If you want to have a verification of it, you look at Annexure A56 and A57 of the Economic Survey 2013-14. Completely shocked. In fact, when I mentioned this to policymakers, to media, to economists, they wouldn't believe this figure. But it's a fact. Then what sustained India? How did we employ millions and millions of people? Even that is not known. There are 58 million non-farming enterprises in India. 90% of them unregistered. They employ 128 million people. It is the carpenter, it is the mason, it is the roadside automobile mechanic, it is the shopkeeper. Out of these 58 million, 37% are in manufacturing, about 35% are in trading, the balance in services sector. This is according to the Economic Census 2013. They have a total capital employed of 11.6 lakh crores and their value addition is 6.3 lakh crores every year. On a capital employed of 11.6 lakh crores, their annual value addition is 6.3 lakh crores according to the Economic Census 2013. They employ 128 million people. You know what is the amount of bank loans they get? Only 4% of their requirements. All this shook the administration. These are all in the public domain. I have written about it. Last year, before the budget, I wrote about it.